Welcome to the Vision ProFiles podcast. We're two Apple Vision Pro headset consumers here to talk about our experience, often with guests who provide special use examples. We'll cover the hardware, software, apps, and current stories about Apple Vision Pro. I'm Marty Gencius. This is our first show. This is the initial episode, so we're going to be building from here. I'm a faculty member at Kent State University, podcaster, and Apple product fan. I'm here with Eric Bolden. Eric, introduce yourself.
It's always the hard part, isn't it? Even on an introductory show.
So let's start with who we are and when we're not on a podcast.
Well, I started out as a botanist and then discovered that you can't make money.
Yeah.
But I like dabbling with electronics. And so, Apple hardware way back when. And each year there's new hardware. And eventually you pick up a job that involves helping somebody else with their hardware, so it's no longer your budget.
So is that what you're doing now? You have a job helping people with other hardware?
Yeah. So now I do support in a biostatistics group for anything with an Apple logo on it.
And you can't see this if you're listening to the podcast, but Eric always comes in with beautiful botanic and sometimes bird backgrounds, pictures that you've shot. So you're a bit of a photographer too?
Yeah, I figured, I need something so that if at some point I retire, I have a hobby. Because playing with computing and all the rest of the stuff I'm doing isn't enough time. Add one more and I don't draw very well, and my handwriting is atrocious. So if I want to remember where I've gone on a trip or what I've done, then it's photography, which is one of the reasons why this whole Apple Vision Pro thing appealed to me, because it's kind of like going back and having a moving ViewMaster. I can go to a location, I can see everything around. And with the headset, I get audio, I get, a view of everything. I get the depth. I can, it's really just like being there. For years, I've taken panoramic pictures and had this long square rectangle of, I can't really tell what's going on. You zoom in a bit and you kind of scroll through the picture. And now there's a device that lets you stand there and experience the spot you were in when you originally took the panoramic picture. It's wonderful.
So you're obviously you're an Apple enthusiast too, in terms of new products. I started with computers years ago, back in probably 70s, 80s, and was a PC person, and worked on PCs, started to build my own PC, and started doing that sort of hobbyist stuff with PCs, and Apple products were always kind of out there in the distance, and I didn't know how to use them when the rest of the world was using PCs. I got my degree in counselor education, so I work as a faculty member at Kent State, and took with me my interest in technology into that. So started doing listservs and various types of multimedia and various types of video, and then podcasts, which I started doing back in 2006. And have done occasional podcast shows. This is a new one for us, and have picked up a lot of hardware. I'm one of those early adopters. Get right on it, pay it, trade the old one in, and get some money for it, and then use it as a down payment on the new one. And I was interested in Apple Vision Pro. I've done some stuff with Meta. I have various Meta headsets, and so when Apple announced, I was real interested in it. So how did we meet? That might be a point of discussion. You reminded me we met at MacStock, because MacStock is MacStock Expo, conference and expo. So if you want to look it up, it's still going on, and it's a great summer couple of days that focuses just on Mac. and in the middle of Northwest Illinois, in Woodstock, Illinois, where we get together and do this gathering and do some short learning and things like that. You reminded me we probably met at MacStock 2 years ago.
I think so.
Yeah, yeah. And now reintroduced with Mac Voices Live.
Yeah, it's kind of neat the way you sort of meet someone and then you come across them again a little bit later, and then in a completely different setting, it's like, oh, hi, yes, and it's a neat effect.
Yeah, and so we both now hop around on various podcasts, and we kind of decided we're the two people that they always ask questions about Apple Vision Pro. So let's do a podcast. And when I started looking for podcasts, there are not a lot out there. Some of them are much technical, some of them are in German. And so we thought we'd make this podcast more for consumers and enthusiasts around it. So how did you get your Apple Vision Pro? You have an interesting story.
So I picked it up. Well, first, I should say, I liked the concept.
Oh.
And I wasn't going to get one, but I did want to go to the demo. But I thought, well, I need more time. I did, in fact, go to the demo. And during the demo, I kept asking questions. And even before I had gone to the demo, I had ordered the lens inserts just in case I managed to, get a demo where I had more time, I could drop the lens. That was before I found out they'll just create lenses. But I sort of kind of planned on having access to an Apple Vision Pro off and on somehow. So then I went to the demo, asked a pile of questions. It was the first day of the demo, and nobody knew any of they knew a few of the answers, but there were a lot more questions than answers. And one of the things they said was, well, you get 2 weeks. Go in, buy it, play with it for 2 weeks, do all of the things you want to do, and then return it. And Apple had no problems with that. Everybody was kind of learning anyway. They needed to get more units out in the world to let people play with it. And so, I had a bunch of pictures from before. There's the demo videos that were available. A few apps here and there, some iPad apps that you could load up. So there's plenty to do. They were still working on fitting. So because I had ordered lenses, I got one lens shield, and then it came with a different one. And I kind of went back and forth and exchanged one, resized it a couple of times. And that was pretty smooth. Well, partway through that first week, I decided this is really nice. Yeah, it was fun to use. Still early, still, the first version of the operating system, kind of some rough edges here and there. But I had friends I had worked with for quite some time, and I said, hey, you got to try this out. So I brought it in and said, hey, try this. Look at this thing, look at this thing, look at this thing. And for one of the people, it was 3D movies and not having to go to a theater. Because the 3D movie, it might come out, be in the theater, but it won't necessarily stay in a 3D movie theater forever, even if it's stretched out a little bit longer. So if you want to go back and watch it, you're stuck watching 2D. So in his case, he wanted to experience a whole slew of 3D movies. The other person wanted to look at panoramic images, 360-degree images, and oddly enough, in her case, she doesn't have working stereo vision. So the 3D part wasn't as critical, but a panoramic image, being able to look all the way around you and be in a spot, that works just fine. You don't need the full stereoscopic vision for that. Oddly enough, Apple had evidently thought of that, and you can adjust the settings and turn one eye off, so it only pays attention to one eye and not both eyes. So all the controls and everything work correctly. That was enough for the two of them to be hooked.
Okay.
So I said, "Hey, have I got a deal for you?" Because I got a week and then I got to return this thing. But, we could each put in some money and split it, a third and a third and a third. And I said, for this week, I'll keep all my settings. I'll let you borrow it whatever you want. You can play with it. I play, we'll all kind of run through, try. One person tried the movies, the other person was doing a bunch of images. I think they had one of the 360 cameras that does the kind of dome thing. At some point, we will have to talk about how to take a movie that doesn't make you sick. That will be a future time, I'm sure. However, that was enough for each of them to find some usefulness for the device. Not enough that they said, "Oh, I want to get my own," but enough that they were willing to say, "Well, you know what? I'll get my own shield, and one person can get lenses, and then divide it three ways. It was cheaper for all of us."
You're sharing custody is what it comes to.
Yes.
And it's like a timeshare in Florida that, like, what if somebody wants to get out?
Well, you can always buy the other person out or swap with somebody else, assuming we all get along with the person. And it wouldn't surprise me if over time we decide that one isn't enough. We have to split it amongst 5 people with 2 units, or eventually we will have more units. Not quite there yet.
Yeah, maybe Vision OS 2 will allow for multiple logins, and there's some rumors around that you could get it, and then say you bought it and it's a single use device in your family, but the family and people in your household, you could have different logins for different arrangements and different setups. I don't know. It seems like it could expand the sales base, and at the same time, it could contract the sales base. My acquisition was a little different. I knew it was coming, started setting aside money, was using actually my Apple savings account. So I never saw it and never touched it until I needed to, and had money saved up. So I went ahead and purchased and got it available on first day, and have been using it since. And I like to say I don't have that monthly guilt of getting the bill if I put it on payments, that you can do with Apple. It's sort of, I don't have to go, where am I going to get that $300 this month for the next 10 months? Instead, it's all taken care of and it's all up front. And I've been enjoying it, and I haven't had the problems that you hear a lot about in the media, the crack gate and all of those other things. I still see that on Reddit, people showing that they have cracks on their device and such. So what are you using for it? What are you using it for now? What's your use like?
I have 2 primary uses. The first one is to be, as I said, to be able to look at panoramic images and larger versions of photographic images, because you can take the image, throw it up against a wall, and see the wall, see the image, and cycle through a bunch of them and not have to go print it, hang it up on the wall, and say, "Oh, I'm not sure if I like that." So it's a lot faster to try a bunch of images without having to pay for processing for each one. And I suspect I'll expand that a little bit. I did a little bit of playing recently, trying to capture some stills and some video with depth. That has been kind of interesting. that kind of references back to there are ways to do it that make you sick and ways that work a little bit better. Luckily, the headset gives you warning that there might be excessive motion in the video you're about to watch, and you can prepare yourself. But the other thing I use it for is basically adding a large screen to a laptop. Because I do work, but I'm traveling from between multiple locations. So I have my laptop, I have my iPad, and what I had been doing is using the iPad as a secondary screen, which, kind of works. But what I really wanted was my studio display that I normally have when I'm in my office, or an iMac screen when I'm in my office. And I didn't quite have, and I didn't want to go for like a 16-inch machine. 14 is as large as I want to carry around.
Right.
The side effect of that, though, is that when you put the headset on, your computer screen goes blank and you just get a large display in virtual space. Yet you can still see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, I was at the dentist at one point, but I needed to do a bunch of work where other people shouldn't be able to see my screen.
Yeah.
I didn't have a cubicle or an office. Put the headset on, I have a whole virtual space. I can throw screens up. I had one screen over a large window. I had, some reference documentation open, and a clock and whatnot. And so basically I had my whole office in virtual space, yet I still could see if somebody had to come and get me or talk to me or whatever. It's very comfortable. Plenty of room. I could read everything. And much easier to get the work done versus the typing on a laptop and moving windows all the time. Just a whole lot easier.
Yeah, I'm using it for productivity in the morning. Basically, I'm organizing my day. I'm going through and clearing out some email. I'm responding to some messages. I do that in the morning, and then I come up and sit in my office here at my house, and I use 3 screens in a ultra studio, and run my work from that. And I have really gotten into using it as an entertainment device in the evening. So after we cut this podcast, I'll probably spend some time in Apple TV Plus and going through some of those shows and watching some stuff on YouTube channels. I'm a baseball fan, so now I get to watch MLB on what I estimate is a 120-inch screen in my living room. My spouse and I argue about how we need a television in the living room, and she goes, "No, you don't. We got them in every room in the house." Now I finally have this huge 6-foot long television screen that in the living room to watch ball games with. So yeah, I'm working in productivity stuff. There's a social element. We will talk about In Space, which is an app that's INSPAZE, and it's a social media, not a social media, it's a social gathering space where you have your own apartment and people can join you. And I met a lot of adults there. It's a $3,500 entrance ticket, the cost of the headset to get in there. And they have some interesting discussions. I've got hopefully a couple of reps coming to talk about that app here. Philosophy, religion, um, all sorts of topics, movies. They have different rooms, and people are just generally nice and really bright. So I'm engaged in a lot more with the device from a social and entertainment aspect than I ever thought I would be, but I'm still using it in the morning with a cup of coffee to kind of sort through my work through the day. We're going to use these particular uses. We're going to go deeper into them in future shows. Kind of our plans for the show is to keep the episodes around 30 minutes so it's consumable. So if you hear us once, you'll want to come back and catch another 30 minutes on another topic or another discussion. Things we'll talk about our use purposes, how are people using it, and hopefully our guests and friends that come in will be able to talk about how they're using it too. I think what you're doing, Eric, with your use in terms of having a portable monitor for you is just brilliant, a brilliant use of it, and it applies to your job very well. So we'll look for more of those purposes. We'll talk about some great apps. There are some, if you've never done a 3D puzzle in space, it's a real trip in terms of trying to figure out relative distances and relative sizes and how things connect. There's some great apps on there, and some of the developers hopefully will get in. We're going to bring in guest users for particular use that they have it for. If there's a job use specifically, when you said dentist, I thought, were you lying in the chair getting your teeth worked on while you had the headset on? And you'd had those weird googly eyes looking at your dentist? But there are probably other work uses and productivity uses. And then current stories in the news about Apple Vision Pro. I'm watching the feeds, and I'll bring those in and we'll share them in our show notes so Eric and I can talk about them together. And I'm always looking for new apps. The first thing I do when I go in, see if that app page has changed. And I'll put some money down on them and get them and then try them out. So I have, like on my iPhone, I have tons of apps that I bought once and never used, but we'll talk about new apps. Do you have some ideas, Eric, or things that you'd like to do?
Um, I I liked I guess I keep coming back to the Viewmaster experience from kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the looking at something, seeing it a little bit different, but kind of like being there. That kind of sense of wonder or the ability to experience something you can't get to. I'm kind of curious about some of the I guess expanded accessibility opportunities or
Mm-hmm.
expanded experience opportunities, the ability to go to a park or go to a location and hear it and see it and maybe experience it in multiple seasons. There's been a lot of research recently discussing kind of getting some natural experiences for people that are stuck in a facility.
Yeah.
uh, and there's we put up some posters and put some pictures up, and some people think that that's fine. But for people who are used to being out and hiking or biking or hunting or kayaking or whatever, being able to actually see some new spots kind of with a similar experience, I think could have some pretty big kind of health benefits and kind of mental health benefits of
Yeah.
being able to kind of connect people to new experiences instead of just kind of the sterile environment that a lot of people seem to spend
Yeah,
time.
there is an app, and one of the difficulties I have is I'll experience the apps and I can't remember the name
Yeah, that's the
because
same.
you can't go into the typical Apple directory and find Vision Pro apps. It's only on the device that you can find them. So I can, but there are some resources. Share Spatial is an interesting app where it's essentially a globe, like a Google Maps globe, and you can take a picture and go to a site. And I've got a couple of panoramic pictures that I've
Uh-huh.
put on the map,
Oh,
and
really?
it's really cool because you can go to different points on the globe. And so I my wife and I went to a tour of Ireland, and we went into some of these old churches that don't have ceilings anymore, just ruins. And I did a couple panoramic shots of that
Huh.
in Ukiah, California. There's a temple of 10,000 Buddhas, and I did a panoramic shot of that. I've done some panoramic shots in Turkey, so I would go in and place them in, but it's sort of a shared, everybody's sharing their experiences, and you get this map of the globe with all
That's really
sorts of
neat.
great panoramic pictures. And so, yeah, I like the idea of looking at it for things like accessibility and giving people opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't have without the device. You mentioned about the monocular vision. I brought mine to my Mac users group, and there is a guy in our group who has some visual problems where it didn't work very well, but he put on the Apple Vision Pro and it compensated for it, sort of like your friend who has the monocular vision. So yeah, those are things that I think we can do in coming up shows. Do you have anything else you want to add in before we close?
Did you look at the Masters app?
No, that's what I've heard is a very good app. I haven't looked at it. I think I downloaded, but haven't gone in.
Yeah, I didn't see it at the time it was all going on, but you can open it up and you can look at players,
right?
And then you can rewatch them play. So it has video of them playing, right?
Yeah.
But then it has a kind of a 3D model structure of the course that you can rotate. And so for every time the ball goes in the air, you get to see the trajectory of it going up and coming down and where it lands on the green. And so you can see the physical shot,
right.
And then you can see the trajectory and everything else and rotate around and look at it from different views. It seems to be really fairly well done. I don't think they charge for it. You just open it up and experience it. And so I'm not a golfer. I have never watched golf, but this was cool enough for me to go and watch it and watch like more than one person.
Yeah.
So that was an experience that was, I think, well worth it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll do a show just on those kinds of spatial video apps or spatial experiences. There is a app, and I can't remember the name of it now. As I told you, I would have problems with it, but it's sort of a spatial. It'll take pictures that you put in it, and bring into the app, and it'll give spatial. It will give dimensionality to it, and it's a very cool app. I put in an old black and white when I was probably 8 years old, standing disgusting around my aunts, and my mother was taking the picture. But once I applied the spatiality to it, it kind of added this dimensionality to it. And I have it hanging up in the wall in my apartment in InSpace. So if you make it in there, you'll see the picture on the wall with that kind of dimensionality to it. So we'll have some fun. I'm looking forward to doing this show. We're going to try and get it out weekly. We're going to get this first show out, and then it takes time to kind of gear up and get it actually out in the wild. So we will try to follow it with weekly shows. Would love to hear from all Apple Vision Pro users for ideas and an invitation to join us for an episode. How do you contact us? You can email us at visionprofilespodcast@gmail.com, and you can find out more about Vision Profiles podcast and your hosts at the website visionprofiles.info. Thanks for listening. Share the Vision Pro podcasts with other visionaries, and we'll see you spatially next time.